Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson. Today we're listening to Crime Beat, and this is Forbidden Love.
She was only 25 years old when police say she was killed for following her heart.
Mom took her to India to the family home. There she falls in love.
She was like a protective item.
They used to do this Romeo and Juliet stuff. Mita would climb over the wall of the house to meet her, and all in secret.
She told me that if her family found out that she was in love with me too, that they would kill her.
There's a car, 4 to 5 guys were in there. They were armed with traditional swords, sharpened hockey sticks. And they went after Mitu directly, attacked him.
His skull was all open, his fingers were chopped off.
They grabbed Jessie. She had some stab wounds. There's evidence of sexual assault.
It was in the front page. That's how you found out. That's how I found out.
It was a gruesome murder that shocked this province.
I did not do anything wrong. It's my niece. I can't kill her.
What haunts me the most is that it's still not over yet.
I hope that somebody, whether it's here in India, makes them accountable for what they did to her.
Here now is reporter Neetu Gaucha with Forbidden Love, the murder of Jessie Sidhu.
BC's beautiful Fraser Valley is home to some of the world's most productive farms, where immigrants helped raise crops on the rich soil and in turn reap the rewards. It was in the early 1900s when the first farmers from India's Punjab state had arrived in the region, paving a path for thousands more to set up here in the decades to come. In the 1970s, the family of Jaswinder Kaur Sidhu, known as Jessie, would do just that in Maple Ridge, about an hour drive south of Vancouver. The family pooled its resources to buy 9 acres of land and operated a successful blueberry farm that would eventually be worth millions. And that is where the story of Jessie Sidhu begins. Jessie was born in 1975 and lived in the neighboring compound along with dozens of her aunts, uncles, and cousins.
My name is Fabian Dawson. I've been a journalist for the last 40-odd years.
It's one Fabian Dawson, the first of many journalists who would show up here, knows well.
The house is one of those large compounds. It's in a blueberry farm in Maple Ridge. And it has like 19 to 20 rooms, multiple kitchens, and it's kind of a commune.
Jessie's only sibling was her brother, Sarwin Singh. Her father, Battar Singh, had schizophrenia. He's since passed away. Like most kids in the Fraser Valley, Jessie attended public school, but she was to come straight home and focus on household chores. James Longridge was her principal.
Very friendly. Got along well with other kids.
But according to friends, she lived a very different life from her peers. In the eyes of some members of her family, it was a life meant to be spent caring for a chosen husband and eventually their children. As a result, her education wasn't valued.
She could have been anything she wanted.
She was naturally beautiful. And she was gracious. She walked down the hallway and she was like gliding.
And after high school, it was the beauty industry that sparked her interest.
She attended my school, Maple Ridge School of Aesthetics, as an esthetician. She was quiet and reserved, but she would laugh, and she had a real connection to the people that she worked with and did the services on. She really enjoyed the work, and she enjoyed her school people that she went to school with.
But her former beauty school instructor says she hated going home.
It was 11:30, that was lunchtime. they were like dogs at the racetrack waiting at the gate. They were all lined up at the back door waiting to go as soon as it hit 11:30. But Jazzy stayed inside, and we talked about all kinds of things. And she wanted a family and she wanted children.
Some of Jessie's family members held on to very old beliefs. According to some of Jessie's friends, Jessie's maternal uncle Surjit Singh Badesha and her mother Malkit Kaur Sidhu thought women were to be controlled and obedient to avoid embarrassing the family.
It's that kind of mentality that infuriates me, where men are in charge of honor in that family and women are responsible for tarnishing it.
She was like a protected item that was up for auction to the highest bidder, and so they couldn't lose sight of controlling that.
Because she was a girl, Fabian Dawson says Jessie's birth was considered unremarkable, and he says it wasn't officially registered until more than a year later.
What she told me and the things that went on, I mean, I never, with all the years I've been in the business and had a salon and had a beauty school, and I've never, ever had family members treat a student with such disregard.
According to some of Jessie's friends, Jessie wasn't allowed by her family to spend her own paychecks, something her brother, uncle, and male cousins kept a close watch on.
So Jessie's money was being deposited into the family account. Now you could see greed, you could see caste. There are elements in this whole saga that is quite pervasive.
I was afraid for her, but she certainly wouldn't do nothing. They just follow me. So she kind of put that off. It's just my cousins following me, or it's my brother's friend. My brother and his friends cousins are following me. Mr. Badesha on 2 occasions came in and he literally pulled her out. She was at the school. He came in and he spoke to her in Punjabi, and she said no. And I came out from my office and I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "I have to go." And he had her by the arm, and I got between the two of them, and I said, I said to him, you can't kick her out of here. And he just looked right through me like I wasn't even there and just grabbed her. Like he had no respect for me whatsoever. I was somebody in his way. And Jazzy said, "Leave it alone, Miss Deb. It's okay. I'll go." And she was gone for 3 days that time. It happened twice. And like I said, it was almost on a daily basis. The cars would either be in the front or the back or both. And, all the girls on Fridays, they would get together and go out and have a drink. Jazzy could never do that.
So during that time, it is one of the family's tradition to get them married off to somebody of the same wealth, the same caste, or preferably somebody who's going to give them $500,000 and come here as an immigrant through a marriage visa. And that was what was being planned in this case. They had somebody. But Jessie, didn't want to have anything to do with it. So when she was about 24, I think her mom took her to India to the family home in a place called Konke Kosa outside of Jagran, which is in the Doaba region where most of the Sikh population in Canada originates from, especially in the Fraser Valley. There she falls in love with Mithu.
Coming up on Crime Beat, that romance, sparked in December of 1994, altered the course of their lives forever. Welcome back to Crime Beat. Jessie Sidhu refuses an arranged marriage, escapes to India to follow her heart. We now return to Neetu Gaucha with Forbidden Love, the murder of Jessie Sidhu.
It was a cold, foggy evening in December of 1994 when Sukhvinder Singh, known as Mithu, first spotted Jessie. In a 2019 interview, Mithu describes how Jessie was visiting her maternal uncle's family and he was on his way home from a game when they first locked eyes.
Listen, I used to play kabaddi at the time and she had come to her maternal family's village, Konke Kosa.
I didn't know. When I finished the kabaddi match, after several days I arrived at Jagrao to go back to the village. I was boarding a rickshaw. In the bazaar across the way she was walking towards me and our eyes locked. It was love at first sight.
The handsome athlete, a professional kabaddi player, says he had no time for girls until he laid eyes on her.
I sat in the same tempo vehicle as her, and as we gazed at each other, we just became more comfortable with each other, and our connection was sparked. This was in December of 1994, and in 1995 she went to Canada.
Jessie and Mittu found ways to secretly see each other, and when she returned to Canada, their love story continued taking shape through letters and landlines over 5 years.
And Mithu never learned English, but I have translated there about 256 letters which they wrote to each other. In Punjabi, those letters, they tell you pain of Jessie. She had drawn a rose, a bouquet of rose. Sometimes I think she drew a chocolate also. I mean, it's such innocent love. And then she will always say, kisses and hugs and all that. I think it was later on, close to their marriage, when she actually started drawing the impression of her lipstick on the letters.
One of the first things she asked me when we were alone, the first couple of days she started school, was she said, I have some things I want to put in my locker. And I said, okay. And I said, go ahead. She said, well, I want to know if you go through my locker. And I was like, no, I don't go through your locker. Like, why would I do that? And she said, well, I've got some letters that I'm keeping in my locker. And if my uncle comes in and wants you to open the locker, will you do it? And I said, absolutely not. It's none of my business what you keep in your locker, unless it's illegal. And I said, what are you putting in there? She says, I have letters from Mithu.
According to close family and friends, for Jessie's mother and uncle, the relationship went against their beliefs because Mithu is from a poor family.
So she kept refusing suitors that the family brought to the house.
Despite her family pressuring her to marry a wealthy 60-year-old man in BC, Jessie managed to convince her mother to take her to India in March of 1999, explaining it may help in choosing a husband they would both approve of. But Jessie had other plans.
They used to do this Romeo and Juliet stuff, right? Mithu would climb over the wall of the house to meet her, and all in secret. So all of this was going on in secret. And while she was there, he took off. They managed to get away for half a day, and they got married in a place called Bathinda, which is about maybe 2 to 3 hours from where they lived.
A few months later, Jessie returned to Canada, a married woman, as her family's search for a suitor had only ramped up.
She told me that if her family found out that she was involved with Mithu, that they would kill her.
Then one day, I think the parents got a little suspicious about her coming and going. So the brother was sent to the hairdressing salon where she worked with Miss DeVos. They opened the drawer and they found that they had a family account. So Jessie's money was being deposited into the family account, but she was also withdrawing the money to send to Mithu to buy a scooter. And that's how they discovered this thing. And then they discovered the love letters that she had, but they were all in the Peaches and Cream studio.
He says after the letters were discovered, Jessie was banned to the basement of the compound.
In the meantime, Jessie's family got a justice of peace and filed an affidavit to say that she got married against her will at gunpoint by Mithu. They then took that affidavit, the sworn testimony, which Jessie was forced to sign, and sent it to India, where the police there used that to arrest Mithu and throw him in jail. And where he was beaten, and he was tortured, and his mom was thrown in jail, and all kinds of things.
Jessie didn't know how to read Punjabi. They lied to her by saying, do this. These are property papers. Sign these papers and go wherever you want, but we're not giving you this property. She said, take it. Take whatever you want, but I'm not leaving Mithu. After that, they condemned me and at gunpoint signed the papers. Jagrao police filed a first information report.
There was one station house officer who gave me a very hard time. I even showed him documentation and photos to back up my claims that nothing of the sort happened. I had no aggression towards her. But the officer said flat out to me, Mitu, they gave me a car, you give me a motorcycle. Even after I showed him everything, he didn't let it go. He arrested my relatives, arrested my friends. After that, I said to Jessie, what have you done? If you wanted a divorce, you should have just told me. She said, I don't know. As I've said, there was a letter in Punjabi for property. This is what they did. So then Jessie called the police in Canada. They helped Jessie pick up her stuff from her house. She then ended up at her friend's house, and then she called me to say, I've come here from my house. I don't want to live here. I want to come to you. I'm not happy here. I tried several times to tell her no. Jessie, forget it. It's too hot here. Despite that, she said, no, I'm not staying here. Then she came to me in India and arrived here in May.
Jessie managed to escape from a prison, a home prison, manages to get enough money, flies over to India, and goes to the police station and sees an inspector there called Jaskaran Singh. And he was in charge of that station. And she tells him the story. And he is flabbergasted. So he takes her to the local court. She then issues a sworn oath that she was not forced to marry him. And then they were released.
So began their honeymoon, while according to allegations and court documents, Jessie's family in Canada was plotting how they'd get her back.
The mother and the uncle here, according to court documents, began threatening them. So Mithu had been chased, harassed. One of his friends who was with him during the wedding, the secret wedding, was killed in a suspicious car crash. So they were on the run mostly.
But that didn't stop Jessie and Mithu from planning a wedding reception a year after they were secretly married in the village of Malerkotla. The night before their ceremony, they went out shopping.
For some gifts, jewelry, and wedding stuff. The killers found them in the town. The mother then, there's a phone call from Maple Ridge to Mithu in his uncle's house. The mother was on the phone saying that she had forgiven him. Bring her back here, we'll do the wedding, we'll pay for everything, you guys can go and carry on your life, we've forgiven you. And Mithu and Jessie were happy. So they went out, they did their shopping. On their way back, down a windy road at dusk, they were ambushed.
After the break, Jessie and Mithu are ambushed in a roadside attack that at first appears to be random. Welcome back to Crime Beat. A plot to kill Jessie and her husband Mithu slowly unravels. But will the instigators be caught? We now return to Forbidden Love, the murder of Jessie Sidhu.
There's a car next to a canal, and 4 to 5 guys were in there. They were armed with traditional swords, hockey sticks, sharpened hockey sticks. And they went after Mithu directly, attacked him.
His skull was all open, his fingers were chopped off, and I think his ring finger was also chopped off. And Jessie's body was so badly mutilated.
Until today, I don't know how he survived that attack. It was just gory. And he was left for dead. They grabbed Jessie, threw her in the car, and took her to a farmhouse back closer to Ludhiana, the main city. The killers are getting solidly drunk and high on drugs by that time. This poor girl is tied to a chair.
On that fateful night of June 8, 2000, Mithu survived. It was his beloved wife, Jessie, who was murdered.
But the doctors who performed postmortem, they told us that she had a cut on her chest and on her face also.
She had some stab wounds. There's evidence of sexual assault.
And while word spread fast of a Canadian woman's death overseas, the story behind it would unravel more slowly in her hometown of Maple Ridge, BC.
For me, I wasn't covering a murder. It was one of those next of kin door knocking sessions, right? Trying to find out a little bit more of the victim and circumstance. So I knocked on the door with my cameraman.
This is where he meets Jesse's maternal uncle for the first time.
I walk up to the door. Sujit Singh Madesha comes out. Even before I started asking any questions after I identified myself, Sujit was, we didn't do anything. We were not involved. And he kept denying. There wasn't even a question from me yet. And then I sat on the floor with Sujit, my interpreter, and the cameraman. And then I asked him what happened. And then he told this story of how Jesse was conned into marrying this boy, Mithu, who then murdered her. And now it looks like the cops are going after him for the murder. Yeah, so I'm like, okay, this is shaping up to be not just the next of kin story. And so I head back to the office. We're up against deadline on Saturday night. Managed to get the police in India, but unbeknownst to him, or even me at the time, police were already building a fairly large file on them. And so I wrote the story of what the police were investigating, the denials by the family, a little bit about who Jesse was, and left for the day. And then the story erupted, right across Canada.
It was a gruesome murder that shocked this province, an alleged honor killing in India with ties to Maple Ridge.
It was in the front page.
That's how you found out.
That's how I found out. I opened it up, it was rolled up, and that's what I seen. And I started crying and screaming my husband out. And I said, this is Jazzy, it's one of my students.
Police allege Jazzy's mother and uncle orchestrated the murder because she married against their will.
Police in India allege the mother phoned her daughter on the night of the murder.
And that's when the phone calls for that night with the mum and her. So the mum was pleading with Jesse to come back. Forget about it. Forget about Mithu. He's dead. Nobody will know what happened. Nobody needs to know what happened. You come back. She refused. So she exasperated, I guess, that her daughter is not going to abide by the rules anymore. And they're fearing that they might be in the crosshairs of the law enforcement. So she then tells the killers, finish up. Right? That's what the cops have in their records, and they tell me that.
Everything is wrong. I did not do anything wrong. It's my niece. I can't kill her. Never.
Did you love her?
But
But as her mother and uncle in Canada continued denying having any involvement in Jesse's murder, the case was being sidetracked in India by a jurisdictional dispute because of where Jesse's body was found.
So the crime was committed in one police district where they had one of the principal hitmen, who was a police inspector, right? So he had organized everything to occur in his district so he could cover it up.
Inspector Jovinder Singh was the leader of the contract killers and he has been convicted. So he was the guy who was supposed to report the crime, solve the crime, brief media about it. Every day at around 2 p.m. And that the other district police, they became very suspicious of Jovinder Singh's, insistence that the body is in his area. He will investigate.
But when they dumped the body, they dumped it into another police district. And so Inspector Swaran Singh gets the case.
Before it came to Swaran Singh, the investigation in India was in the hands of a corrupt officer who was later found to be directly implicated in the crime.
They tried so hard that in some way they pushed me aside so they could create their defense and save themselves. I treated this case as if it were my own family member who was murdered.
So they secretly got his phone calls. They found hundreds of calls to Jesse's mother and Jesse's uncle and some other persons known to Jesse. So that is where how the case was cracked.
So Inspector Swaran Singh's work laid the foundation for this case to be where it is today.
Were you afraid for your life and your family's life?
Yes, ma'am. I faced so many threats in those days, but I did never bother these threat calls. Then I have doing work with honestly.
Where were those threats coming from?
Comes from Canada. But the persons who called, who gave me the threats, they have not disclosed their name.
They rounded about 12 people within like 2 days because of Swaran Singh's investigation. You know, Mithu, in the meantime, doesn't know anything. He's unconscious in hospital.
While the police were deep into their investigation in India, here in Canada, the RCMP was reluctant to investigate a murder in another country, even if it might involve citizens from their jurisdiction.
Detectives in India say if you want to commit a crime, then do it from Canada because the police here won't pursue justice.
Here's what Jessie's family members in Canada told Global News 2 weeks after her murder.
Big shock to everyone. It's just really tragic.
It's just a terrible tragedy. So.
Nobody even knew about her getting married to this guy. The family was just trying to explain to her, like, are you sure this is what you want to do? Right? I mean, it's the parents' right to try to explain to their child, like, are you sure about what you did? Is that what you really wanted? And there was no ill feeling.
Yeah, there was.
We were just trying to understand, why she did this without telling everybody.
Do you think that she was killed because of who she married?
We can't say. We
don't know. I mean, like my brother-in-law said, we just heard this from the papers there. And we really don't.
Why. We have no idea.
We're hoping whoever did this to her gets caught.
Reading from his book called Justice for Jessie, a first-hand account from Mithu.
Jessie's remains were cremated in a simple ceremony attended by my family while I was still in hospital. But until today, the people who arranged to destroy our love, Jessie's uncle, Surjit Singh Badesha, and the mother, Malkiat Kaur, remain free.
After mounting pressure from advocates and journalists, the RCMP finally started to investigate. Jessie's mother and uncle, who continued to deny any involvement in her death, weren't arrested until 2012, the same year this book was published.
A mother and an uncle suspected of ordering the murder of a young woman in Punjab more than a decade ago are only now facing the courts. The two appeared before a BC judge this afternoon. It's all taken too long, say police in the small Punjabi town where Jassi Sidhu was killed after defying her wealthy family.
But they continued to deny any involvement in her death, even after 7 people charged with Jessie's murder were convicted in India in 2005, including one of her uncles, Darshan Singh Badesha, accused of arranging the killing on behalf of the family in Canada. He, along with 2 others, eventually had their convictions overturned on appeal.
And what haunts me the most is that there is a high likelihood that the mother and uncle will go free.
Coming up on Crime Beat. Now that Jessie's mother and uncle have been arrested, a lengthy extradition battle is about to get underway in Canadian courts. Welcome back to Crime Beat. Jessie's mother and uncle are to be tried in India for masterminding her murder. Will Canada's justice system allow their extradition? We now return to Forbidden Love, the murder of Jassi Sidhu.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin tonight in BC Supreme Court, where a judge has ordered the extradition of a Maple Ridge mother and uncle.
I'm Michael Klein. Was Mr. Badesha's extradition counsel.
2 years after they were arrested, Jassi Sidhu's mother, Malkit Kaur Sidhu, and her uncle, Surjit Singh Badesha, were ordered to be extradited to stand trial in India.
The extradition process has two parts to it. The Federal Department of Justice put forward a case, what is called a prima facie case, which means that there is some evidence upon which a jury, reasonably instructed, could enter a conviction. It's a very low threshold. The second case is whether or not the Minister of Justice ought to surrender the person sought to the requesting state.
In a drawn-out legal battle, he argued his clients were concerned about India's death penalty, a corrupt trial, and being tortured while in custody.
Minister of Justice gave some assurances that he was confident that that would not happen. We took that to the Court of Appeal to British Columbia, and we were successful at that level. And the Court of Appeal said the Minister of Justice had to do more.
Arrested in connection with Jassy Sidhu's murder, her mother and her uncle. But today the BC Court of Appeal overturned their extradition order.
She was a wonderful girl. I was on the witness stand. I can't even remember all the questions he asked me, but some of them were just, I told him what I experienced, told him what I went through, I told him what the people in the back of the school and the front of the school, Mr. Badesha coming in and grabbing her, and the stories that Jazzy shared with us, and how she was fearful if she got caught, that they would kill her.
Why did you question the reliability of some of the witness testimony?
I cross-examined on the basis of reliability, how you can remember whether or not they could identify him and things of that nature.
Well, we've got over a hurdle. I got involved with the media when they went to the trial. Yeah, I was upset with the delay and the fact that lots of people in this community knew what was going on, had known about Jazzy's being threatened, punished.
The court in BC argued it wasn't reasonable for the federal justice minister to accept India's assurances about their safety once they left Canada. But in a 2017 ruling, the Supreme Court of Canada disagreed.
The Supreme Court of Canada overturned our Court of Appeals ruling. And then things became a little bit interesting. And in fact, unbeknownst to anybody, they were being moved.
Those who'd been campaigning for accountability in the case and following the extradition closely were shocked at what happened next.
I think the police and some of the lawyers thought, let's get rid of them now. So they woke them up very early in the morning one day and flew them from Vancouver to Toronto.
We heard anecdotally that they were actually on the gangway, the ramp, to get into the plane to go to India. We got word of that the morning that this all started.
I couldn't believe that. I just thought, who's involved in reaching out to their lawyer? Because somebody behind the scenes had to say, oh, they're landing in Toronto. You might want to stop this. Like, you know who did that? To what end?
They were on, just about to enter the plane with three representatives of Indian police. We managed to get into court. It's RCMP police officers that were escorting them. And once they got a phone call, said, stop. Then they were held in immigration hold in Toronto overnight and then flown back to Vancouver. But for the fact that we were able to persuade the Court of Appeal to give us a hearing the following morning, they would have been in India. I mean, it's extraordinary. As far as I'm aware, completely unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it. It's something that you could make a movie about.
Defense lawyer Michael Klein says Canada worked with India in an attempt to secretly extradite the suspects.
And quite literally, I couched it as pejorative as possible, couching it and calling it kidnapping, because they were literally taken out of their jail cells. Not surprisingly, the minister, who had already apparently made up her mind that they had to be surrendered, dismissed our further claims.
In 2018, the BC Court of Appeal upheld their extradition. They arrived in the capital of Delhi in 2019 to face trial in Punjab state.
The mother and uncle of a young BC woman who was murdered in India nearly 20 years ago made their first appearance in an Indian court today, charged with arranging her murder.
Their lawyer tells us neither of the accused have been harmed in prison. The murder victim's mother was released on bail in December of 2020, both now faced with a trial delay due to the pandemic.
Hopefully, Canada will not allow them back into this country. They ruined a lot of lives, and they have to live with that.
Coming up on Crime. It has been more than 20 years since Jassy was murdered. That hasn't stopped her supporters in their fight for justice. Welcome back to Crime. With the trial of Jesse's mother and uncle Delict, there are fears they will be set free. Here now is Nitu Gupta with a conclusion of Forbidden Love, the murder of Jassy Sidhu.
It has been more than 21 years since her former student was brutally murdered, and as she flips through the newspaper she stashed away over the years, Deb DeVos says the sorrow is just as strong now as it was back then.
It's gonna miss her. I hope that somebody, whether it's here in India, makes them accountable for what they did to her.
Jesse's story has been the subject of movies, books, and international media attention. And those who've been touched by it continue to fight for what they believe she deserves.
I'm sorry she's had to go through what she's had to go through, and no resolution, as if there could be any. She was murdered and she's gone, and there's no honor in honor killing.
What does justice for Jessie mean to you?
Just remembrance of what she had to go through.
What made you want to start a scholarship in memory of Jessie?
It's a knowledge of what happened, why it happened. That boy, in 1993 she graduated. In 7 years' time, she's dead because she married the wrong man. And don't forget, these students that are graduating today, this happened before they were even born.
These binders are evidence of how her former principal spent much of his retirement speaking to politicians, the public, and journalists to try and ensure those he believes are responsible for Jessie's death would stand trial in India.
Well, these 3 binders are probably going to go to either the library at Pittman House Secondary or in the resource center at the board office.
I don't know what legacy to leave Jazzy. Protect the women that are going through what she did. You know, be there for them and speak up for them.
It's a crusade. I've been doing this for now for over 20 years, you know. I've become attached to this, and ultimately I want to see some justice for Jessie.
Why? Why are you so attached to it?
You know, I don't know. There's something about this woman. I've never seen her. I don't know her, but I know everything about her. I've never met her, but I could tell you a life story. But it was just the tragedy of this forbidden love that, you know, just was so touching, so moving. This is not a crime that's pervasive through the culture. This is not a Sikh crime. This is not a Punjabi crime. This is a crime of greed. It's a crime of hate. And it can happen to any community. You know? When I went back 3 years later, 4 years later, the chair was still there. I didn't expect to see anything from the actual crime scene. So it was quite jarring and shocking to see the chair where she was sitting when she took her last breath, right in the middle of the room, you know. And it's just horrifying. What haunts me the most is that it's still not over yet.
People often complain about the pace of Canadian justice system. We can't hold a candle to India. And that's been borne out because they're still going. It's still ongoing in that country.
Michael Klein believes this case could change future extraditions. He's disappointed this one didn't go back to the country's highest court.
We didn't go to the Supreme Court of Canada, so our Court of Appeal applied the law as it was, but maybe that's for another day. And maybe this case has to be revisited as a precedent, and maybe the law will change in that regard.
All the while, we're just seeking the truth. There's overwhelming evidence and motive and cash transactions and phone calls. Who else would want to kill this girl? The book served its purpose as thing. It sort of pushed the Canadians to act faster.
In order to actually put it in perspective, we needed a platform like a book for this, to make people actually understand who was Jassi, who's Mithu.
One thing he says Mithu wasn't is a paid rickshaw driver, as has been heavily reported over the years.
He drove auto rickshaw only to meet Jassi. There were so many reports initially in Indian and in Canadian media that he was auto rickshaw driver. So there are so many such aspects, which needed to be clarified. Mithu was an ace kabaddi player. If he was a kabaddi player in today's times, he would have been a millionaire. He was such a striking player. Only a book could do justice with it. And then book was a platform which would actually spread a story worldwide and which would add to the demand for justice for Jassi.
That mission for now retired Inspector Swatin Singh is to fight legal cases from the courtroom rather than the police station. He's becoming a lawyer committed to helping prevent similar tragedies and the falsely accused like Jassi's husband Mithu, who is now in jail on drug-related charges after years of being framed and falsely imprisoned. In one case, it was alleged that two of Jassi's uncles who lived in India convinced a woman to falsely accuse Mithu of rape.
So one of those fake charges resulted in going into jail for 4 years. Badesha's brother got a girl in the village to accuse him of rape. He was then immediately arrested and sent back to Ludhiana jail. In that jail, in the same jail, the killers were supposed to kill him on the other side of the jail. And they were threatening him with inside. So he had to have special custody and protection. He was constantly being harassed. He was being caught and thrown in jail. Of late, what I have heard is that when he started using drugs to alleviate pain, it became quite uncontrollable. So there have been cases by his own volition.
Life was empty without her. I think she would have been a wonderful mother and wife, and she has compassion. She had passion and a zest, and she lived her life to the fullest. She didn't deserve it. And I hope her husband finds happiness somehow. I know he hasn't.
Her legacy is going to be one, but where her story is going to be retold. So her legacy lives on, And I'm hoping that if nothing else, people can read, see what happened to her, and maybe stop another woman from being killed just because they love somebody that the parents don't agree to. I will continue covering it. I'm hoping, and I don't often say this, but I'm hoping I'm wrong in my belief that they will get away with murder. Because I really hope, and I'll do my best to ensure that there's justice for Jassi.
There's still no word on when the trial in India will begin, as it's been delayed due to COVID. Jassi's mother was granted bail late last year because of time served, and her uncle is still awaiting his bail hearing. We were able to get a message to Mithu in jail requesting an interview. However, we were told he was unable to respond. In the meantime, Jassi's former principal, James Longridge's Justice Scholarship, in honor of Jassi and the fight for justice in her case, will be awarded to Pitt Meadows graduates pursuing training in a criminology or justice-related field. I'm Anthony Robart. Thank you for joining us tonight